Hi, everybody. My name is Nick DePalma. I'm the founder and CEO of SpacetimeLabs, the creative agency for science. And thanks for joining our CoLab series on developing science experiences. This month, we're discussing how to build an audience for your science with news and social media. You can send us your questions at any time. And to begin, I'd like to show a short video featuring European Space Agency project scientist Matt Taylor discussing their outreach for the Rosetta mission. I love that video. I think it's a perfect introduction into how your public outreach is at times, and many times, kind of a process of trial and error, because you have a project scientist who may not be an astute marketer or social media strategist, but they knew the most important component very well, which was the science that they wanted to communicate. And the way in which they would develop that communication and share it with the public came down to, well, let's try cartoons, or they tried a host of things, and eventually, obviously, the cartoons really stuck, and it became very popular. So trial and error is an important thing to remember when you are developing content for social media. Would like to first, before we introduce our guest, talk a little bit about what exactly is a science experience. And well, as we put it, science-related content or products designed with human-centered or design thinking principles and user experience strategies to surprise, inform, and inspire consumer audiences to engage, interact, and support your research. or as we really like to say, when your science communication doesn't need to use the word science in your communication. It begins with the research story shared out in multiple channels. The story doesn't change, but the content does. If it's social media or a website or virtual reality, augmented reality, maybe a podcast, an ebook or infographics, it's motion video, maybe it's documentary film, or maybe it's just a presentation, but the story remains the same. And that experience is how people interact with that information and that story in the channels where they are. And today, specifically, we're talking about that social media, that news and social media component of the science experience. Science has a tremendous responsibility to inform the public. If you've gotten a research grant, of course, built into that grant is the requirement to communicate the broader impacts of your research and your science. Many times that is developed by individuals on the team. It may be a website, it might just be a document, it might be a poster, it might be a presentation, but it may not necessarily reach the public where they are and how they engage with multimedia. But are we asking scientists to do too much outside of their research to be these great communicators? Not everybody can be a Neil deGrasse Tyson or a Michio Kaku or a Brian Greene. Not everybody, not every scientist is exceptional at social media or news media savvy. You may not necessarily have the names and numbers of various news directors of the science desks that still remain in this country, and how to reach out to them and know what's going to get picked up as a news story. A few years ago, a friend of mine named Sarah DeWitt, who was a communications director for the chief scientist at NASA, held a presentation and was interviewing Christopher Joyce, who is the science correspondent for National Public Radio. And in this discussion that they had in front of an audience, she was asking Christopher Joyce, from the reporter's standpoint, what he felt was a big challenge, the biggest challenge for scientists when communicating to the public about their science. And as he explained, prior to any interview where they're just discussing back and forth maybe how that interview might go, or setting up the pretense of what the information is going to be shared, those kind of things. And it's a very colloquial, very fun, conversation. Everybody's relaxing, having a great time. But as soon as the camera or the microphone turns on, invariably, everybody seems to get science face, where the personality seems to go away. They focus only on the facts, and the magic seems to just kind of leave the room. Recently, at the AAAS annual meeting up in Boston, Christopher Joyce spoke to a live audience and shared a great number of slides and tremendous information, great storytelling. And one of, I think, the most important pieces that came out of that was where he said, don't just share your data, share your awe. When you explain to an audience what you love about science and what you love about your research, people invariably begin to engage and interact and want to know more. And the story is important, but the open narrative brings people along for something even bigger. It's the reason why we watch series like Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead over and over again, because we're attached to these characters. We want to see what happens. We want to be part of that mystery and part of that journey as they go. Seth Godin said a little while ago at a conference, he's a marketing guru for those who aren't Godin. Great books I suggest you pick up and have a chance to read, that people don't buy goods and services. They buy relationships, they buy stories, and they buy the magic. And how do we take those relationship stories and magic and apply to the science and bring people along for a great journey? So with that, I would like to introduce our first featured guest, Scott Morgan. Let me actually get Scott on. if you want to turn on your microphone and your camera, Scott. Excellent.
Let's do it.
Scott, tell us a little bit about Scott Morgan.
Okay, well, first, this is my science face.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to do that, actually. I was hoping you would come on with your science face.
Oh, my goodness. Where to begin the story? I am a research science communicator. That's what I teach. I've noticed it started with biomedicine. I work at NIH as a contractor and have for 25 years. But I've noticed it also branches into other kinds of research, which is political science, which is sometimes it's pure bench work stuff, and sometimes it's more in the psychology area even. But it's always research based, it's always science based, and those are the people I have the privilege to listen to and coach.
And prior to that, you were a journalist and an anchor. You were involved with news. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a head start only because I got lucky and I had my own TV show on Home and Garden Television for 10 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where all the science happens, of course. There's a tremendous amount of science happening in your garden, by the way, right?
It was. Well, the cool part was we got to go around and look at all the cutting edge materials and builders and people that were doing really scientific stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
That was the cool stuff.
Well, that's really science in your backyard, and most people don't really know that, or think about it.
Rather than pillow design.
Yeah, right.
Pillow design's not my thing.
As a matter of fact, I have somebody that's in the science of sleep, and they do develop products. And one of their recent products, I won't give them a plug here because this isn't commercial television, but they have developed a pillow that is supposed to help you stop snoring and to help you get better sleep. It's fascinating. Maybe we'll do that in another show, but
I'll get one for my wife.
So it was funny because as I'm building the rundown for the show today, and I was looking at some URLs and some great things to share and talk about. One of the things that I saw, I'm going to post the URL here.
This the NASA one?
Yeah. Hold on one second. I want to make sure that I get the right URL here. This came out in Newsweek, and this is the news. NASA has a press conference tomorrow. I think it's like 11. They knew we were going to be talking today at 11, so I'm sure that's why they switched it to tomorrow. But they're going to be flying a spacecraft into the atmosphere of the sun. Now, it may not be a very long transmission as they get very close. But what I think is really interesting and very exciting about the project is the amount of news and coverage that it's already, starting to get. So my question was, what goes into an announcement like this? How does it become news? Not everybody is NASA, right? Not everybody has a gazillion followers. So that's, they have definitely an advantage there. But if you're not NASA, how does a program like this, before it even launches, right, before it's even off the ground and heading toward the sun, how does this become news?
Well, that's what we used to cover on television myself, which was, and what I've been teaching, is it has to be newsworthy. It has to be something that's of interest. And what I want to point out about that article, which you very kindly sent me the link to, was most people, their daily work, it would be on the minutia of that project. So for example, buried in that article, it says there's 11.43 centimeters of carbon composite shield to get close into the exoplanet's orbit of their own suns, giving us unprecedented information. So that's the granular level where most people are thinking and working. Totally fine.
And how much work goes into getting it? That's very carefully crafted speech. There's a lot of work that goes into making it simple, right?
And that's where I loved about this article is they bury that part. So the part that you think where you spend your life, the work you're doing, it gets buried in the bloody article because what's relevant, and here's the point that's so important, is even though that's your daily work, you have to be thinking, well, what's relevant? What do people care about? They titled that article "Touch the Sun." Now, who isn't going to go, oh, cool, what's that?
Yeah, right.
And what I've noticed after 23 years is that we all have something that's cool, something what you call the awe. I call
Yeah,
it the cool part.
yeah,
I call
yeah,
it,
yeah,
come on, what floats your boat? What's
yeah,
the part that wakes you up in the morning? What's another good word there is relevance.
yeah.
Now, there's always something. Biomedicine, there's great initiatives around the brain initiative now. Obesity is a big one. HIV is still very popular. You could even go, if you were off that into engineering, you could think of cybersecurity,
Sure.
something like that. There's always a bigger relevance that I think we basically kind of have to pull our head out of the sand a little bit and go, well,
Yeah,
why do people care about this? And
right.
that's what you lead with.
Is the national conversation around subjects like these, do they create that or add to that relevance and add to that value? Is it, or when do we start opening up something new into that national conversation? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I think that's a great. I think the
Yeah.
point of, and what I teach is story. What I teach is
Hmm.
science story, and I love that comment you said about how do you tell the story without saying, "Oh, it's science," as opposed
Yeah.
to
Right. Sometimes that word science can
just
turn
scares
people
people.
off in the public, or at least it just starts to kind of create gray
Yeah,
area. And maybe I'm not worthy to read something like this because I'm not a scientist.
yeah.
I think a lot of that is certainly changing. And I think the national conversation around some of the science budget communication that we see, those things. And again, NASA is one of those agencies where it has a huge following,
Huge cool
and
factor.
anything that comes out of that, news directors do tend to take notice.
Yeah.
Uh,
You asked,
I,
but I think you have to do both. I think you have to say, what's the bigger picture here? And it could be
mhm.
something like drug targets. It could be
Yeah, sure.
brain mapping. It doesn't have to
Right,
be NASA. It doesn't have to be something that's science fiction or
right,
has the potential of making a movie out of it.
sure.
But I think what you also have to add is what's the cool part? What's the new part? And there you got to really narrow your story. So
Right,
what NASA also did was they went, okay, here's the big picture. Here's
right,
the touching the sun. But what are the important things? How long
right,
will it be there? So
right,
I think it says June of 2025 is when it finally finishes.
right.
It talks about that composite shield. It does talk about the weather information that we're going to get from this, because a lot of
Hmm.
it's about environmental study. So it's not like they shirk on the science. It's just that they put it in the right order. It makes a good story, as
Yeah,
opposed to,
sure.
oh, I'm going to start with, how many bits of information that's going to be sent over how long. And
Right. Yeah,
maybe, but you don't lead with that.
right. I just opened up a poll actually to kind of get some feedback from folks here
Okay.
about, how do you share important news about your research with the public? And there are multiple channels if you're lucky enough to have some staff to kind of help you with it.
Yeah.
But there are multiple channels, whether it's press releases, social media, videos, blog posts, and all of them are very connected to each other. As a research group, let's say, we've hypothetically have research results that are coming through. Of course, you hear this in news, a new study says, or
Mhm.
recent research says, those kind of things, which aren't always accurate. There's a lot of context that misses in some of those. But as a research group, if I have, new and fascinating material to share, take me through that without getting too detailed. I don't think
Yeah.
we have time for that.
What's
But
that
tell me a
process?
little bit about how I reach out to news directors to get my research story covered.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I got a couple of things here, and I'm sure
Hmm.
Emily does too. So I don't want to cut into her thing.
Hmm.
But the first one is, and I think this is just due diligence. You do have to check with legal.
Right.
You do, if you work for the NIH, you have to. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
government as
Sure.
well.
Of course.
But I would obviously go through the comm department and say, do I write my own? Do you
Right.
guys help me with this? If it's a small startup, I would go, you pretty much talk to the boss and say, I'm launching this.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Right.
That's the end. Off it goes, right?
This may not
Um,
necessarily be the best case for, better to ask for forgiveness before
right.
permission, right? Because
Yeah,
in
that's
some
right.
instances you can cause harm, but at the same time, if you do have an open communication department, and this is not going to be news to them necessarily,
Mhm.
but yeah, having that communication department or somebody in there managing communications in your group is a tremendous support when you launch out
Huge,
of this, right?
huge. And
Yeah,
if they don't exist, you're not dead in the water. You
right.
can also, I would start, you can even start following people. Just follow the science reporter for the Post or the
Yeah,
Times and start seeing what starts to tickle them. I would highly recommend LinkedIn and add yourself to the groups.
Right.
My higher degree is in psychology, so I connected to a couple of groups just to see what people are posting, articles they share, blogs they post, videos they put on, which I hope we'll get to sometime this hour. And that's, I think you do kind of have to start those relationships, and don't hope that that first discovery is going to get on CBS. That's not the goal.
Right. Gotcha. So I'm actually going to use that as an opportunity to introduce our next guest, featured guest, Emily. Stand by, Emily. I'm going to go ahead and turn everything on here for you. And you are good to go. Emily, you can join anytime by turning your microphone and your camera on. Emily, are you there? I'll give her a couple of seconds. I think she's just trying to get situated there. And I believe she's joining us from AAAS. She is a program director with the Engage Science program. But what I thought was, I'm going to actually add this next URL to our sign up here, to our program. Science Magazine from AAAS has a program they do every year called Dance Your PhD. It's a contest. It is awesome. I've just been on check, and it's been going on for some time. I was not aware of this program. Recently, last year, I started presenting for the National Science Foundation's Innovation Challenge Boot Camp for community colleges. And when we were kind of in the planning of how the presentation, this is like a week-long boot camp series. And I'm working with their public affairs group, and they had invited me to come and speak and present, about how to design your identity around your enterprising science program. And I just half jokingly said, actually, I think what I'm going to do is a whole interpretive dance routine to explain designing your identity. And it's kind of a Bob Fosse take on things, and, laughing. And that's kind of carried on for a little while. And then I see this Dance Your PhD article, and I found it on Twitter, and I just,
Fantasia.
Yeah.
Fantasia,
so now I'm sending this to all my friends over at the National Science Foundation and say, look, this is coming. In a couple of weeks, we have to give this presentation. Now I have inspiration. So, Emily.
Can you see me?
I don't know if she. Yeah, I see you. I got you there. The connection here seems to be a little low, so you're going to be a little jittery. You're probably on Wi-Fi over there, right? And that Wi-Fi is being split among several people, probably over at AAAS. So that may be a little bit of an issue, but we're going to power through it. So if you would, tell us a little bit about you and what you do at AAAS. Emily, could you hear us? All right, so I think they're going to have troubles with the Wi-Fi coming out of AAAS. Okay. And I think, yeah, she just jumped out, so I think she's going to come back on.
We can press on some other stuff then.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Good. So one thing I would highly recommend that scientists look at, you asked about that whole process component. And yeah, some of that's relationships, some of it's just tweeting. And I realize that's not going to get to the level that you want. But one thing that helps tremendously are videos, little short videos. You heard that Matt Taylor piece right away.
Yeah.
This began for scientists, at least in biomedical science. They called it the 3-minute thesis, and it was out of Auckland, New Zealand. And people would just talk about their ideas. So there was no data. This was just, or if it was highly preliminary. The NIH started borrowing that. So for the last 4 years, we've had the 3-minute talk competition. And scientists from all disciplines have to get their work down to 3 minutes. They have one slide.
Wow.
And it has to have greater relevance, a very finite story, obviously. And then it needs to highlight the cool parts, just one aspect of the work. And it takes a lot of discipline to really find the language for what is that short thing.
Right.
I would unbelievably recommend that you start thinking about whether you record it or not, doesn't matter, but starting to create that 3-minute pitch, which is actually kind of an elevator speech, though you have data. And that idea of here are the essentials of my work become unbelievably important. If you start to like it later on and say, hey, I actually want this filmed, then, have a buddy do it. Don't do a selfie.
Yeah,
Actually set it up. And then it's just you and a slide and just kind of walk people through it. It's good for chalk talks later on in your career.
Sure.
When you're doing some kind of interviews. It's great when you go to conferences, even when you don't have that. And people say, what are you working on? You go, I've practiced this. I found the language.
Is 3 minutes too long? I mean, is there maybe even having in your back pocket just like a 30-second or 1 minute piece? Because you never know how long that elevator ride is going to be, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Make it shorter. The fun thing about 3 minutes is you don't feel like you're, shirking on the data itself. Right. Though I would recommend one other one until we get Emily back, which is something called sciencesketches.org. It's put up by a buddy of mine from NYU.
Okay.
And that one is 2 minutes. So you don't have 3, you get 2, but you don't have to put yourself on camera. It's only a sketch. So it might be something like, you get a little piece of paper like this, and you're narrating what you're doodling. Very similar to what you just showed, that Taylor piece.
I just added the URL to that here.
Yeah, sciencesketches.org. Highly recommended. Check those out. Then you go, you know what? Okay, I don't want to show myself. I'm uncomfortable on camera, but I want to get my work out there. I want to get comments on it. That's a great way to start. And I kind of thought of this myself years ago, thinking, we should all be at a coffee place and be able to scribble our work on a bev nap. Those little tiny napkins. Here's the most important part of my data. We should all know it so well that it can be chicken scratch. It doesn't matter, but we're getting the idea across. So I like both of those ideas. Some kind of a video, which you can pop on LinkedIn, the science sketch, which you can pop on LinkedIn, so that the people get some kind of idea that you're trying to make an effort out into the world.
Right. Wow. And that social media component, as you're working with your clients and you're talking about sharing those stories, and you're developing, obviously helping to develop both the video pieces, maybe the long form articles, maybe even longer form research papers, finding the headline and developing the headline, because in social media, that's the first thing that you really want to pitch out there. And that headline needs to have that kind of immediate attachment to whatever those individuals. Now, you're not going to be able to connect with everybody with a single headline, but there's going to be, a group of people, that section of people that you're going to connect with most. Tell me, Emily's back for a second, and then they're freezing again. So that's okay, Emily. Just join when you can. Understand. So it's all good. But talk to me a little bit about developing those headlines and how that headline, is it the same headline that's going to be for a news article? Is it a different headline for social media?
I think it's different. I think they have to be really sexy, basically. You're looking for titles.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick example. I was working with someone who works at the Cancer Institute, and we did a video of his. It was about 3 minutes long. Okay, so you could say that's a little too long. But how that worked out so well for social media was we took these little tiny 20-second sound bites from inside the video. So there was just a little sentence, and we tweeted that, which will autoplay.
Right.
So you don't even have to, when you open up Twitter, it actually, you don't hear it, but it starts to move.
Wow.
If it's that short.
Sure.
So it became basically any good sentence just became, we'll push that sentence. And then the next one we'll push another one. Each of those have different headlines, to your point.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, oh God, we have to tell the whole story all the time.
Sure.
You really don't. The idea was then when you clicked on it, it would go to the full 3-minute piece.
Right, exactly. The trial and error, to borrow from the ESA scientist there, the trial and error is why not, you can, because in Twitter, you're the goal is to tweet up to, anywhere from 3 to 10 times a day, depending on what you have time for, of course. But you can retweet that same story with a different headline. The URL may not change, but that headline's going to change. And if you have multiple Twitter channels and feeds, then obviously you can share that same. You can retweet your other channels and those kind of things. So retweeting previously posted content is widely used. I mean, I want people here to understand that that you can change the headline, even though the URL is not going to change. And if that image, which you can certainly change the image that appears in there, the headline of that is going to be there. But the headline, what you attach in your tweet is, you can change that when you discover what that audience is. And what I tell a lot of our clients, the real trick to building your audience, whether it's news or social media, is to start with one person at a time. And because viral is a bit of a myth. In many cases, it's the effort that takes a very long time until you have that one force multiplier, Twitter multiplier, a Facebook multiplier that gives you that really crazy kind of a viral lift. But it's typically over a long period of time. And we have Emily back. And I just want to say a few words, Emily, because I was talking about multiple Twitter feeds, and AAAS has how many Twitter feeds?
Oh my, we have a lot of Twitter feeds. And my center alone has 2.
Right. Right. Which, one alone is plenty to manage, right? I mean, just one is plenty. Right.
Yeah, well, we really tried to sort of separate out our Twitter feeds to accommodate different audiences. And I think that's something that is really a challenge for individual scientists, scientists who are working in a lab or at an institution, is sort of figuring out, how do you balance that? Do you have different Twitter feeds targeting different audiences, or do you try to reach 3 or 4 different audiences with the same feed?
Right. Right. And that's, well, and that kind of brings me back to the Dance Your PhD. That what I noticed on the Twitter feed. I'm in love with this. I'm not a scientist, but I want to go back to school, get my PhD so that I can be part of this program and shake my booty. This is too much fun for science to be having, right? It's awesome. and it's been going on a while. This isn't just like the first one. This has been going on a while. I found videos dating all the way back to like 2008, and it goes back even before then, doesn't it? What was the first one?
This is the 10th year of Dance Your PhD.
Oh my God, that is too cool. The content out there.
Social media, or it predates widespread social media.
This is that kind of like viral content eventually that gets there.
Yeah.
It's very clever. So I'm getting a little bit of echo on your end. If you can, I'm not sure, Emily, or if that's Scott.
Is it me?
It might be. So when we're not
mic off for a minute, let's see.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to turn your mic off here. You can turn your microphone off, I guess, when I'm speaking on your device, and I think that's Emily. So you can mute your speakers when I'm speaking, I guess. Dance Your PhD, 10 years, incredibly viral potential content, right? It's sharing some science story, but it's also giving the public something as entertaining or interesting to watch as they're learning a little bit about science. Tell me about the social media component within that communications plan for something like Dance Your PhD, which is not necessarily trying to explain science. It's trying to generate interest in an event, in the contest, and participation. Come participate in science. That's what I think is the exciting story of it, right? So, Emily, tell me a little bit about what that communications plan or social media strategy and that communications plan.
Yeah, so I think Dance Your PhD really benefits from having the 10 years of
Right.
of work that has gone into it, because it's pretty well known within the science community as, hey, here's a fun thing you can do when you're, for people who are new PhDs, here's something fun you can do to kind of break out of that last 5, 6, 10 years of research that you've been doing, and really try to get your creative side going. But it's open to people who have gotten a PhD whenever. It's not just new PhDs. It's, whoever got their PhD whenever can enter this contest, as long as it's in some sort of science discipline, social science, biological science, chemistry, and so forth. And so I think it's really just a fun way to think about research and to think about how to communicate the importance of the work and the fun of the work that people are doing. But because there are 10 years of videos, there's sort of this almost unlimited set of cool, fun content that can be reposted on Twitter as examples, that people can point each other to, and hopefully get some really good ideas.
Right.
And the Science Magazine, which runs the contest, has actually developed a really nice website that tries to give people tips on how to make good videos, as well as pointing to examples, both examples of previous year's dances, as well as pointing just to sort of the things like the OK Go treadmill video, or the people from American Idol who have done crazy bad singing videos, just to say, here are all these different ways that you can try to interpret what it is you do.
Right.
And then in terms of making a social media plan, again, because it already has a pretty big following, they're able to put up the hashtag DanceYourPhD, put up the contest announcement, and then just sort of go from there. For something newer, there is a little bit more of a plan of thinking about, okay, do we want to reach out to different societies? Do we want to get individual scientists to do this? Sort of how do we get the word out? Obviously, Science Magazine is a pretty big platform, and so putting things up on the Science Magazine Twitter handle and on the AAAS handle are going to get them to a big audience. And from there, because there are so many followers, it's a little bit easier to get the word out.
Actually, tell me, and because that content partnership, I think, is a really important part of that strategy. Various entities that are and properties and channels that are within the AAAS universe, and there are plenty. I actually just muted your mic real quick, just so we don't hear my feedback. But those outside partnerships, obviously AAAS partners with many different agencies and organizations to share science. But tell me about those opportunities to develop on those content partnerships, and it not necessarily just with Dance Your PhD, but when it comes to a big announcement rollout or trying to increase engagement or support or fundraising, those things.
Sure. So we have AAAS affiliates. We have over 200 affiliate organizations. A lot of them are different science societies, other groups that are interested in science. And so we work with all of those different affiliates to send out content, to give them information that they can use. They give us information, and we collaborate a lot via the CEOs of those organizations, as well as through the people who do public engagement and communications, people who do government relations. So that's a really nice opportunity for us to know what's going on across the science field and to harvest some of the cool stuff that's happening, but then also to send out the fun things that we're doing, and to work with those societies to get them to share information about things like the Dance Your PhD contest, or we recently put out a science advocacy toolkit that drew on information about how to contact members of Congress, how to communicate about your science on social media, how to come up with that message that you want. So we're able to share that with all of our affiliates and to really bring from them the best practices and some of the really interesting stuff that they're doing. So relationships has been really important to building the social media community around all sorts of things happening in the science world.
Right. And going back to the ESA scientists regarding the trial and error, because then this is important, I think, for all of our viewers here to understand that there is no silver bullet. There is no, magic wand that makes everything happen. And a lot of times there is this kind of aspect of trial and error, without obviously giving all the bumps and bruises away necessarily for AAAS. But tell us a little bit, let's be honest here. Tell us a little bit about some of those trial and error instances where you thought, these things were going to have great engagement and they didn't. But then how did you redirect and find success in it? What are some of those, an example of trial and error in things that you guys do? Maybe it's not you or through your department or what have you.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is you don't know what is going to do really well on social media until it's out there and you're sort of, did you hit it at the right minute? Did you, did you happen to schedule your post for the same time that NASA had a great announcement about, a probe entering the atmosphere of the sun? And so everybody's tweeting about that and you're sort of gets lost in the ether. And sometimes you can control this, sometimes you know what's happening, and sometimes there's a big breakthrough and you've tried to be really responsible and schedule your tweets in advance, and then the timing just doesn't work out. We've done, over the last few months, we've done a Facebook Live series where we have broadcast panel discussions on Facebook and on Twitter's platform Periscope, basically conversations about science communication, science policy, the president's budget, congressional budget stuff. And, we thought they would be popular, but we didn't know which ones would be most popular and which ones would sort of, be interesting, but not really get picked up. And what we found is that the ones on the budget were really, really, really popular, and which we kind of knew that might happen, but it was overall, this whole live Facebook, live Twitter was a new experiment, and we didn't know where we were going to get, 3 people watching, 300, 3,000, and over time we ended up having probably 2,000 to 3,000 people watching live as the events were happening. But within the first 24 hours they were out there, we got as many as 10,000, 15,000, even 20,000 views as things got passed around on Twitter and on Facebook, as people pop back in. Maybe they had caught 5 minutes, but they were at work and so they couldn't watch the whole thing. So they came back around and watched it. We promoted it in different ways. So some of them we tried promoting far in advance. Others we announced, maybe the day before, because it took a little while to get them put together, figure out who would be on the panel. But in the end, it turned out to be a really interesting experiment and something that we're going to continue, because not only does it give us some really good social media content, but it puts real faces on what's happening. So it's not just a couple tweets here and there, but you can actually be part of the discussion, and people can tweet questions or comment on the Facebook posts with questions as the activities are happening. And we can go back in afterward and respond to comments, add additional links, add additional information. So there have been some really good conversations taking place in the comment section of Facebook and in the reply threads on Twitter.
Awesome. I think what we'd like to do now, I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity out there to share their questions. So if anybody here in our viewing audience would like to post a question in the chat, please do so. You can use the Q&A tab that's down at the bottom of the chat window. If you have any questions regarding the challenges that you have in your social media strategy, your communications planning, reaching out to news directors, getting picked up by news directors, I think that would be, you know, these collabs are conversations about your challenges as well. So please go ahead and send us your questions. I have a question, actually, Scott. We were talking a little bit about, you know, how do you get out in front of news desks? Where are the news desks now? I mean, this is one of the bigger issues. Is where do you go? Do you go to an agency and try to partner with their communications group in order to get some gravity for your story or something? I mean, where are the news desks now, man?
Yeah, they don't exist. They're in cyberland. So
yeah,
you're right. I think if you're with a larger organization with a bit of a budget, that's a great idea. They could partner with somebody like you. They could partner with somebody that does just new graphics or something like that. So I think that would be just fine if you did that. The other thing I wanted to follow up on what Emily said, if the dance your PhD is frightening, because we tend to be a reticent bunch as scientists,
right.
You can even think, as that sciencesketches.org thing I mentioned, just think you could also add a soundtrack to it, which is a fun way to kind of get something cool. Yeah. I love this song, and then you're not singing it, you don't have to dance it. And about that retweets, and maybe this is another answer to your question there, is I always think about you joining a group and retweeting to make you a thought leader.
Yeah.
What conversation do you want to be promoting, so that even if you scroll down your feeds after the last month, are you proud of each thing, or at least it was thought provoking?
Sure.
So I way back when I started all this, you mentioned 10 times a day. That's probably initially a little unfeasible, but even once a week, do it at the end. Do it Saturday morning. You know, okay, so what I learned this week? What's the credit? Pick one article you liked this week. And I think that's what's going to help. Getting in front of the actual editors, you might have to go to actual trade publications. That's probably the earliest, easiest way in. And boy, would I start at conferences. There's always somebody there covering something, even if you just make the connection and if they don't follow your story, you know who the people are that tend to follow those kinds of things. But you're right, the traditional print, somebody who's going to call you and say, hey, I just heard about your great discovery. Let's do a profile on you, is highly unlikely.
And more often than not, they're going to probably pull a press release if they get it, depending on, you know, where the press release is coming from. And a lot of journalists today are just copying and pasting some of these press releases and, you know, a lot of reposting of other news channels content, citing and doing it in an ethical and respectful way, of course, but it's still not necessarily coming across as an original interview or anything that's exclusive. You rarely hear the word exclusive when referring to news in science that's being picked up. Emily, question regarding how
Nick, you muted yourself there.
Hey, that's not right. When you are sharing that information out and trying to reach news desks, where does AAAS go?
Yeah, so we actually have something called Eureka Alert, which is a place that shares a lot of the information coming out of AAAS, but also coming out of various universities. So we work with public information officers at the universities, we work with our news staff here, and reporters have access to Eureka Alert, and so they can get those press releases, they can get a lot of that information right up front. And then we also have a team called the Science Press Package team that works with authors and with the media to help get the story out there and to highlight content that's really fun and shareable for the different stories. So for example, we have a journal, Science Robotics, that launched very recently. And so our science press package team works with the authors to make sure that they have cool videos of the robots, doing their robot thing. They also work with the authors to have really nice plain language summaries of what the study is about and what it means. And then that's something that can be shared on our end, but that can also be shared by the authors as an easy outreach tool when they're going to press folks in their particular area.
What I'm actually just, while you're saying that, I'm posting a couple of things because I think what's really important is to think about what that social media communication plan is going to be. Well, there is the communication plan overall, but it connects social media, press releases, and as I've posted in some of these polls, some of these various channels that should be part of your social, your communications plan. One of these resources, an article that I always keep at bay and I send to our clients all the time, is how to create that social media plan from scratch. The communications plan can sometimes be a behemoth. It gets really big, and you're always kind of adding to it or editing to it. It can be pretty exhaustive at times if you don't have multiple people working on it. But if you just focus on what that social media plan might be, I think that gives a great deal of insight into all the various components, understanding what your actual resources are. How much time do you have? What content do you already have, and what needs to be created? That takes time. Incidentally, of course, that's what Spacetime Labs does in helping create the content that fits into your communications plan. But not every group necessarily has a creative agency for science in their budget. We recognize that, which is why we have these for free to kind of help you learn how to do it yourself. There's also in our research over the last year and a half ago, ran across somebody doing some really great science communication media and created a free online course for science communication media. It's a gentleman by the name of Aaron Huertas. Sorry, Aaron, I hope I didn't mispronounce your name. Interestingly enough, he is on today. He's actually here attending, and I am actually going to give him presenter permissions here because I'd love for him to come on and just talk a little bit about that. So Aaron, if you can hear me, I just turned you on to presenter permissions. You can turn your camera, your webcam, and your microphone on, and please join us when you can here up at the top. If you have any issues, please let me know. I highly recommend checking out his online course. It's really cool. It's a mixture of video. In fact, I think it's mostly video, but then there's a lot of other posts and articles and materials that he has kind of curated and brought together. Some very cool stuff. So if you have a chance, there is a link in there that I just posted, sciencecommunicationmedia.com, and the course specifically is online-course.
Hey, Nick,
yeah.
Isaiah has a follow-up question.
I did notice that. So Isaiah asked, should we structure our own personal science communication plan to look similar to this? That's a great question. Hey, there's Aaron.
Hey,
Aaron, you just popped on. Hold on one second. And I'm going to go around the room, starting with Scott. And then, Aaron, I want you to come in on this because it's a great question. Should we structure our own personal science communication plan as an individual scientist taking on that opportunity? And correct me if I'm wrong, Isaiah, I think this is what you're asking. As a scientist, do I develop my own plan, or do I contribute, or is it already contributing to the plan of the larger science and research group? I think that's his question. That's a really good question.
Great
Scott,
question.
start with you.
I'm going to take a bold leap and say, have your own.
Yeah, look
You
at
have to think
you.
about your overall career, not just the organization you're working
Sure.
for also. And I
Right.
want you to be thinking the thought leader, join the conversation when it's appropriate. I'm not sure what your article is. I'll check that out later, but
Yeah.
I would suspect that it's going to be the suggestions there for a small organization I would follow as an individual.
Right. It's interesting because we do have a few individual scientists as clients. One in particular, an astrophysicist who, works with a couple of larger groups. And he has his own material. And so, at times he feels a conflict because he wants to be the responsible individual and support the groups that he's tied with. But, his career is his responsibility. Their career is their responsibility. So I think there's certainly an opportunity to work in tandem, and that's what I always suggest. But I think that's great advice, Scott. Emily? I'm sorry, what would your advice be? Do you agree with Scott as an individual scientist?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a plan, and what that plan looks like really needs to fit the particular thing that you're trying to do. Have in mind, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? What audience are you trying to reach? And then from there, figure out what messages make the most sense. So, the way that your plan looks might be a little bit different, but starting with thinking about that goal and thinking about that audience is really important to make that foundation. And from there, you can figure out what your plan might look like.
Oh, that's great. I think what is the color of the voice, the tone, the texture, and the way that you're communicating as opposed to the group, the agency that you're with. That's awesome. Aaron, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think to echo what Emily said, it really comes down to audience for me, and everything flows from who's your audience, what are your goals for that audience, and one of the exercises that I do is I put up a big picture poster of all the characters from The Simpsons, if you can picture that in your head, and we go through, okay, where do each of these characters get their news, right? So Mo at the bar might watch the nightly news. He might have a trade publication he subscribes to for bartenders, right? So you could reach Mo through those channels. If you want to reach Mr. Burns, you're probably going to have to reach Mr. Smithers, because Mr. Smithers covers everything for Mr. Burns. What does Mr. Smithers read? He's probably reading the Wall Street Journal, Nuclear
Bloomberg.
Blog.
Definitely watching Bloomberg. Yeah.
Yeah. So your communication strategies really flow from there. And to this question of, do you have an individual strategy? Do you follow your institution? I think the ideal thing is to have an individual strategy that's consistent with an institution's goals, and I think broadly consistent with what a field is doing, and what the broader movement of people who want to promote science are into. So I think explaining why your science matters, how it relates back to federal funding or state funding, or any ways that the public is supporting your work, emphasizing messages like that are really important right now at a time when we're having all these big disputes about what the future of these science budgets look like. So taking stuff from organizations like AAAS and other leaders in the field and saying, okay, how can I relate my research and my science back to these bigger, broader communication goals that the scientific community as a whole has? Because we all are pretty much on the same team, even though it's a very competitive field.
Yeah, what Isa brings up that I think is really interesting is, that's the plan, but what about the content? If I'm a scientist creating content, generating content, I'm going to own it, but what responsibility do I have with that content, maybe to share it with maybe the agency that I'm in, and that's question to you, Aaron, regarding how that generated content, because I may be sharing results or content from a research group, but what if I'm a whiz at Photoshop or After Effects motion graphics, and I want to create this stuff? What responsibilities do I have when I share that?
Well, a lot of my experience has been with NGOs and with public agencies. So for the public agencies, you kind of have to review everything, and it's got to go up the chain, around the chain. It takes a long time, but it can be really great and have the weight of that agency or that institution behind it when you publish. I think folks have gotten a little bit looser and more experimental with this, at least in the decade I've been working in the field, and that's a good thing. So for the most part, as an individual, if you want to experiment with something, usually what happens if what you're communicating isn't that great, or maybe even isn't that consistent with what your institution wants, most of the time people just don't see it, or they ignore it, or they forget about it. So as long as you're not hitting that point where you're taking a risk that could make the institution look bad, I think you're fine. And then, of course, there's that smaller percentage of stuff that hits and is great. So to your point earlier about experimentation and A/B testing, that's really successful. And within an institutional context, this is kind of an old example now, but the CDC, which is a risk-averse institution, they ran a blog post a couple of years ago that was, how do you prepare for a zombie apocalypse?
Yes, loved it. Remember that.
Yeah, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but it turns out, the way you would prepare for a fictional scenario like that is the same thing you would do for a hurricane or a flood or all this stuff that happens every year anyway.
Or any other kind of contagion or pandemic that's provided, of course, the zombie apocalypse starts with a pandemic. And I'm not convinced that it will. I'm just saying, but yeah.
The institution created a little bit of experimental space for somebody to do that, and it was hit. So that was good for them.
I thought it was great. I do remember that. It was a lot of fun. I have a few friends at CDC, and they were the first person I called when I saw it. And so I feel protected. I'm ready to go. I have all the provisions and MREs and water that I need. There was a great question that comes up from Sophia. Apologies if I mispronounce anybody's name here. Do any of the speakers have experience in crowdfunding science? I am developing a science communication plan to my crowdfunding campaign strategy for much needed funds in the tropics. Location. Any tips? Scott, anything to add?
I have helped some people with crowdsourcing, but it was not in science, though I think it would be a perfect platform for that.
Right.
And what seems to be the trick is, you're going to have to really kind of promote that a great deal. LinkedIn, Facebook, obviously Twitter. And the other thing I would think was make it an easy in, so that people are funding something not just in a financial amount that's easy, but that they get something for it. Give them some swag.
Right.
Send them a pencil.
I am sharing this right now. Sophia, I'm not sure if you're aware of a website called goodworld.me. They make it easy to donate as sharing a comment or a like on social media. Goodworld.me is a great platform for 501c3 organizations. You can establish a relationship and account there and drive a program that promotes people giving on social media, Facebook and Twitter. And when you post something, whether it's an article, a video, or what have you, and in that campaign, you can ask people, because you have to ask or else you won't get it. That's kind of a key thing in any fundraising. If you don't ask, you won't get it. And don't be shy, because if they're connecting with you, then they expect that. They understand that's part of the business there. So you ask them to hashtag donate whatever number. It's literally that easy. Hashtag donate 20. And then through the Good World platform, it generates a communication back to that individual to sign up for Good World, to create their account, connect their bank account, and drop you $20. And it is an absolutely wonderful program. What they're doing out there, they're local here in the DC area, but man, go to goodworld.me and take a look at some of this. And I believe AAAS might have I think they may actually have an account with them too. I think they're listed as one of their causes. That would be a fantastic program for you, especially because you are a little remote in the tropics. I'm a bit jealous, of course. And so that's what I would recommend. Emily, do you have anything to share regarding the crowdfunding science question from Sophia?
Sure. Yeah, so I think one of the things that we found when I talked with other scientists who are working on crowdfunding, I said, you know, what will your funders get out of it? Is it that they get, you know, a warm, fuzzy thing, which, you know, that's nice, but doesn't give them something. So what will you give back? Will you give them an update on your research? Will you give them photos of topics that they can look at December and January when it's freezing cold here? You know, sort of what is what they get back? And so, for example, I'm working with scientists at Earth Science Women's Network who are doing some fundraising in the summer as part of a crowdfunding campaign to get more money for the Earth Science Women's Network. But they're asking scientists to basically post a picture, a tweet, a video every hour for 2 hours to see what a day looks like. And so the scientists who are doing that are basically reaching out to followers on social media and saying, you know, sponsor me. Every time I post a picture, give me $1. And so if I don't find the world free $12 or science network. So what are some of the fun things that you get back that also helps money?
I'm going to chime in and suggest that maybe a Bill Nye bobblehead. I think that if I would be a little bit more motivated to give like $5 just so I can do that. Where is it? That little every now and then, because I love Bill Nye and I just think he would appreciate that. Aaron, not talking about bobbleheads, but in regards to the crowdfunding, tell us a little bit about what your suggestion to Sophia might be.
I just tried finding a resource from Andrew Thaler, who tweets under Southern Fried Scientist, but I like a lot of what he writes and has to say about this. And to Emily's point, he makes a lot of the scientific projects that he does participatory. So people are building ocean drones. He's open sourcing the plans. He has a Patreon. So whatever depth level you want to connect with him and his work, you can do that all the way from, yeah, I like you on Twitter. Yeah, I want to kick a couple bucks into your Patreon, like all the way down through. I'm gonna host a build project for these robots, and I'm gonna make the science with you. Yeah. And I think that's like a very advanced form of not just crowdfunding, but really citizen science, participatory science, open democratic science, and that's what the internet is kind of pushing us toward. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think when it's almost kind of a Patreon. In fact, Patreon I think might even be the best way to do that, because then you're giving, because it costs quite a bit, and understand, and not just in dollars but in time, to develop a serial program, even if it's just 5 minutes, but to do it every week or every month, to put together some kind of a program or a series of videos that shows the behind the scenes of the science happening, the research happening, and if you contribute, if you can give $5, $10 or whatever into this, then you can join the audience and follow along. But in order to be part of our audience, and again, like you said, make it very participatory. I think that's absolutely brilliant. That's kind of really giving it forward too. Even I really like that. That's a brilliant idea. Well, I think we're running just a little bit over, which is a good thing, because there's a lot of great. Oh, wait a minute, I got one other question. I'm going to go back to Isa, because I think he's got another question. A question from a trellis discussion, because I know a lot of people here probably on trellis. Question from a trellis discussion last week or something. What do you guys think of "quote unquote" crashing into a hot Twitter trend hashtag or respond to a social media post? Can and should we crash those with science? Wow, look at you. That's like guerrilla. I like it. I'm always going to say go for it, but that's me, because I think that's how you get noticed today, man. And as long as you're respectful, and but wow,
respectful and cite your sources.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. Be authentic. In all cases, be authentic, right? I think that's really, that's great advice, Scott. Emily, how would you feel about somebody crashing AAA?
Yeah, I think as long as you are on point. So if it's a hashtag about the swimming pool in Brazil turning green, tweet out the chemistry related to the swimming pool turning green. Don't tweet about, global warming, little aliens somewhere that aren't related to that topic. But if you can stay on point and find a way to connect to your science, go for it, because you're going to get, some of the people who are just sort of marginally touching that topic, they might be really interested in what it is you have.
I would add crash with a gift, right? Crash it forward, so make sure that it's actually going to support the individual that you're crashing on, and give them kudos and props, and thank them afterwards if they don't send armed goons after you. Aaron, what do you think? Crashing, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the absence of scientists weighing in, other people will come into the vacuum with all kinds of information, some of which is often inaccurate, right? So having scientists be part of that mix is always good. And I think there's a science-attuned public that wants that gift, that thing that they can then pass on to their friends and their peers, especially when there's something big in the news that we can relate back, not just to our science, but again to why we support science as a society.
Sure. And I say, look, if you're on Reddit, especially, crashing is part of culture. I mean, that is invariably going to happen because, trolling is, kind of and varying degrees of trolling happens certainly on Reddit. I've been in various science Reddits where, trolling is, their crashing happens quite a bit. But at least most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, it's done from a place of authenticity, and they're trying to drive that conversation into either greater detail or greater truth, or, again, trying to drive numbers and interest in it too. So yeah, I think that's all great advice. If anybody else has other questions, you can certainly share them on Twitter using the hashtag SciMedia. We will certainly be following up all of our guests here. Scott, Emily, Aaron, if you want to follow along either at SpacetimeLabs.co, follow on using hashtag SciMedia. By all means, please feel free to reply to some of those questions and answer them. A couple things that I just wanted to go over before we leave. Storytelling for effect. That whether it's news, whether you're connecting in social media, understand that you are storytelling for effect. Headlines are important. The content that you share, make it human. It's important to get emotional. Connect to reflect so that you can have more of those conversations with your followers and to generate new followers, because they are going to be your evangelists. Their friends, their followers will notice and decide whether or not they want to join. Be visual. One of the, what I like to tell some of our clients is in your 4-to-1 ratio of images to video, whether for every 4 posts, whether it's a website or a photo or an image, try to get one piece of video in there, because it is by far the most engaging content that you can share in social media. And promote action. That's a really important part that I think a lot of people tend to forget, is ask them to do something if you want them to do something. It's important to ask. Do it in a way that they understand, that your followers understand that they're part of your project, they're part of your science and your research. They're all on that same journey with you. And I think don't forget to ask. That's the most important thing. In fact, you can start first by asking and then go through those steps for storytelling for effect in order to drive the value of why giving, participating, acting, being a citizen scientist is so important. There is no silver bullet to this, right? There is no one strategy beats all. But that one little piece that applies to everything universally is that you have to just start, because you won't learn anything until you do. Want to thank AAAS, of course, for lending us Emily, it was great to have you on board. AAAS is always welcome to contribute and join us here. We love what you guys do. Annual meeting is one of our favorite events. And of course, Dance Your PhD is our favorite event now every year. So that's going to be awesome. Thanks again to NinjaComms and Science Disrupt. They're contributing partners for us. They definitely share out for us, and good friends of mine, and great projects going. So please take a look at NinjaComms and Science Disrupt. And of course, you can find us at SpacetimeLabs.co. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Would love to know how we can help you connect with your audience. Reach out to us anytime. Thanks again, Scott. Thanks, Emily. Thank you, Aaron, for being our surprise special guest. Great to connect with you. Look forward to more conversations, Aaron, and having your face frequent our CoLabs. Thanks again, everybody. This is recorded, so eventually, once it's available, it'll be sent out to you via email, and you can check us out. Some feedback, if you can give us a little, be constructive, of course. We would like to find ways of making these CoLabs better, more valuable. We build them for you so that we can have a conversation about your needs and how to improve your public outreach and science communication. Thanks again, everybody.